This is part 3 of the jQuery image slider where we will be doing the jQuery portion of the assignment. So first we're going to start with a couple of script tags. The first one's going to point to the jQuery file. I'll put type equals text/JavaScript, and then we need to point to the source file. And my source file is inside of a JS folder, and we are using in this assignment jQuery 2.1.4.min.js. We'll close that script tag. We'll go down to the next line and we'll start another script tag. Type equal JavaScript once again. Go down a little bit and close that. Inside of our script tags we're going to put HTML comments so that the validator skips the JavaScript. And inside of that script tag, the first thing we need in jQuery is our document ready function. So we'll do $sign for jQuery. Inside of this, if we just start, it'll suggest document, hit dot, start typing ready, and that finishes out our document ready function. The first thing we're going to do to the assignment here is make the thumbnail visible or not visible. So this first part is display the thumbnail. And what we want to do is select the LIs that are on the page and animate them on hover. So we're going to $sign, select the LI, we'll use animate .hover, and then this is where we write in our function that we want to take place. This is going to also have a function on exit, and so that'll finish out our function, and the inside we'll write the body. In this first one, we're going to select li.preview. So you see it pops up there. And we're going to change the CSS on it. In the CSS we have name equal value pairs. So I like to go ahead and put double quote, comma, double quote. On the left is the name and on the right is the value for it. And what we are doing is changing display between block and none. So this one will be block and this one will be none. And that finishes simply displaying. If we come back here, hopefully that'll pop up for us. Refresh. So we've got it to display and disappear. Next, let's put the thumbnail in there. For this one, we're going to select a.thumbnav. Do .hover. Oops. Inside of that function, this one's a little bit tricky because we have concatenation involved. So I'm going to create a variable. I'm going to call it rel because inside of if we come back here, scroll up just a little bit, we have the UL, the LIs, and then we have the anchor tags with class equal thumb nav, and over here we have rel. And what we are grabbing is this inside of each one. So if I come back here, my variable name is rel. You could call it anything. And I'm going to set that equal to this .attr. attr is a great little function that allows you to get the attribute out of any tag on the page. And the attribute we are looking for is the rel attribute. So now that we've gotten that, if I just do an alert at this point and I write out rel, what that's going to do is pop up an alert box on the screen and give me the value of rel. And I come back here and refresh. When I rolled over, it says I'm looking at images/thumbs/3.jpg. If I go to this one, images thumbs 7.jpg. Second one, thumbs 2.jpg, and so on. So now get rid of that alert because you don't want it. That's just showing you what it's grabbing each time. And concatenation is when you combine two or more pieces of text into one. So let's say that we have another variable, and we'll call it words equals how, and then I'll do another alert, but in this one I'm going to write some text. I'm going to concatenate it with words. I'm going to concatenate that with some text. So here I'm going to write hello, comma space, and here I'm going to write space u question mark. So you can see I have some text that I've typed concatenated with my variable right here, and then some more text that I've typed. If I save that, come back to my web browser, mouse over, we get hello, how are you? Well, I forgot how, but hello, how are you? So that is concatenation, combining strings together into one common string, and that's what we're doing on this line. So we're going to do $, div.preview wrapper. So we're selecting the preview wrapper. Again, we're going to change the CSS on the page. So for that, I'm going to start with my same name equal value pair layout. What we are changing is the background of that thumbnail box that's on the screen. And whenever we use background in CSS, we can set a URL. So I'll do URL space no dash repeat space center. And in here is where we are doing the concatenation. So what we need to wind up with is some text on the left, some text on the right, and then a variable in the middle. And the way that we do that is 2 double quotes, put the cursor inside of the double quotes, 2 plus signs, put the cursor inside of the plus signs, type the name of the variable, and you'll see that's a different color. And then you can put in some spaces if that helps you view it a little bit better. So now what we are doing is taking that images/thumbs/7.jpg that we grab out of this, and we are writing it right here. And that finishes out placing the thumbnail in the box. So I'll save that and come back. Refresh. Now you can see the thumbnail changing as we go over. Next, we are going to work on the left and right click. So we've got those arrows in place. This first one we're going to have is when the right arrow is clicked. And again, I'll remind you the code that I've provided has more notes in it, so you'll want to go and look at those notes because it helps describe some of the code. We are going to select div.next. And when that next div is clicked, we want a function. And I'm going to go ahead and put a comment after this closing just to make sure that it stays with, or if it gets off the page, I know where the end of the right click is. And I'm going to go ahead and put a comment after this one for in document ready. So div.next, you'll remember, if we come up and look, we have these two divs, div class equal next, class equal previous. The dot in the selector here means the div with the class of next. So when you see the dot, that means you're looking for a CSS class. Inside of here, we have an if-else that basically allows us to, once we get to all the way to the right, we can click it again and go back to the beginning. So we're going to have an if-else. And in this we have a counter, and I'll have to, when we finish this if, we'll jump back up and create the variable counter. So the counter is double equal to 7, else space if the counter is less than 7, and get your curly brackets in there. Inside of those curly brackets, above and below, is where we're going to be working. Now before we go any farther, I forgot to create our variable counter. We do that just inside of the document ready function. So my first line inside of document ready should be var counter equals 1 semicolon. So now I have a counter on the page, and that's going to count between 1 and 7. So now the counter equals 7 is a boundary case. A boundary case is when you get to the edge of what you're looking for. And then this is all other cases. So let's handle the all other cases first, because when the page loads we start on image 1, and when we click the right arrow it's going into this here because the counter is less than 7. Now you'll remember in laying this assignment out, it took a lot of trial and error. So it was a lot about knowing what I wanted on the screen and then changing the numbers to get it to move correctly into the right position. So we're messing with some of those numbers here. We're going to select the image tag. And so what this selector means, we're selecting all of the images. So select all of the image tags, and we're going to do an animate. what we are animating is the left, and we're going to change it by minus equals 650. So that's going to move it, or it's going to change whatever the current value of left is for CSS. It's going to subtract 650 from it. And then I'm going to close curly bracket, and we want to do that over 250 milliseconds, closing parenthesis, semicolon. Down here I'm going to put a comment for and else if, so I know what that goes with. So again, if we are on the first image, second, third, fourth, fifth, or sixth image, we will come in here, we'll select all of the image tags, and we'll change the CSS for the left of the image, and we will subtract 650 from it, because our images, I think, are 630, and there's some white space in between. After that, if you recall, up here in the code, in the LIs, one of them has class equals selected. Now what we are doing in the next lines of code is moving class equals selected. So instead of being here, we're going to move it. The right arrow was clicked, so class equals selected goes here. We click the right arrow again, and class equals selected goes here. Click the right arrow again, and class equals selected goes here, and so on. So I'm going to put that back where it's supposed to be. And what we've done is we've created a dummy class in our CSS called previous nav, or PREVNAV, and we're going to assign that to the currently selected one, move the currently selected one, and then remove the previous nav. So we have 4 lines of code here. We're going to select li.selected. So that's the one that has the class equals selected applied to it, and we're going to add class previous nav. Once we have previous nav assigned to that tag, we are going to remove class. We're going to remove the selected class from it. Once we've done that, we can select li.previousNav and use next. If you do .next with parentheses, add class, that moves to the next one down. So just like I was manually moving things, .next will do that. .add class, and we are adding the selected class to the next one in the list because the right arrow was clicked. And then finally, selecting the one with previous nav and removing the previous nav class from it, because if you leave it, then the next time you try to do this, it will be messed up, so you've got to remove it. And lastly, that counter that we added, we need to increment that counter by 1. So if I go ahead and hit save there, and I come back, refresh this page, And now you can see that I'm moving across, but then when I get to that last image, nothing happens. That's our boundary case. So our boundary case is when we get to the end, what are we going to do? Well, on this one, we're going to do very similar things. I'm going to copy the guts of what I just typed right here, and I'm going to paste it up here. We're still selecting all the images and doing an animation. We're still changing the left, but instead of this hard-coded value, we're going to hard-code a plus equals, because we want to move it all the way back to the left. We want to go back to the beginning. So we've been subtracting, subtracting, subtracting. We get to the end, we want to add a bunch. And how we add a bunch is we're going to group this together. It's going to be counter minus 1. So counter minus 1 times 650, because that's how much we're moving it. Now I want to make sure that that happens before the addition here on the left, so I'm going to put a further grouping outside of that. So we have left colon plus equals concatenated with counter minus 1 times 650 pixels. Now we want it to happen very fast, because you don't really want to see all 6 of those pictures scrolling by. So instead of 250, we're going to do it over 50 milliseconds. Next, we don't need 4 of these because we know that we're going to the first image. So because we know we're going to the first image, we can choose that first image. So what we need is li.selected remove class selected. So I have that. And then we're going to select pound nav1 dot add class selected. So here, the one that was last selected, we're going to remove the class from it, and this says apply the selected class to pound nav1. If we scroll up here, you'll see that li with the ID of nav1 is what we're going to apply the selected class to. Now instead of counter plus plus, we need counter equals 1, because we're going back to the beginning. Remember, it's a boundary case, so you get all the way to the right and we're going back to the beginning, so we set counter equal to 1. Now if we save that, come back here, refresh, see where it jumped all the way back to the beginning again. We'll do it again. Now we just need to duplicate that for the left. For the left, I'm going to copy everything that I just did there. Make sure you get, this is why I put comments after my closing brackets. Make sure you get all the way to the end of the right click. Copy that, put in a couple spaces, and this needs to be inside of that closing document ready. Again, that's why I put comments there, so I know what I'm looking at. This one's going to be end of left click, so I'm going to change that comment. Scroll up here a little bit, see if I can get this all on one screen. This is when the left arrow is clicked. There we go. So now we've just got to change a few things about this. Now, again, we're looking at the left arrow. So if we start all the way to the right and we're moving left, 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 we've got a boundary case when we get to the very beginning. So we're not looking for counter equals 7, we're looking for counter equals 1. And in all the other cases, we're not looking for if the counter is less than 7, we're looking for if the counter is greater than 1. So that changes our if-else. Up here at the top, remember we have a div.previous and a div.next. This one needs to be div.previous because it's our left click. So again, let's start with all other cases. In this, we're going to have select all of the images, we're going to animate them, we're going to change the left in CSS, but instead of a minus equals 650, it's a plus equals 650, and we'll leave the timing the same. We have li.selected add class, that's fine, remove class, that's fine. The third one where it says next, instead of moving to the next one, which means move down, we want to move to the previous one, so it's prev. And then that last one is fine. And if we go to the bottom where we have counter plus plus, we don't want to add one to the counter, we're moving left, so we want to subtract one from the counter, so it's counter minus minus. And I'll change my comment here. So that takes care of all of the normal cases of moving left. Now let's jump up to this one. This is our boundary case. When we're moving left, and we get to that first one. When we get to that first one and we click again, we want to go all the way to the end. So, in our boundary case, we are selecting all of the images. We're going to animate. We're going to change the left in CSS, but instead of a plus equals, we want to do a minus equals because we've been adding, and then when we get to the very end, we want to subtract a whole bunch. Now in this one, I'll make it a little bit simpler. It's another way you can do it. Instead of doing the counter, we know there's 6 images. Now that's a hard coding, that's not good for future coding. But there's 6 images, so we do 6 times 650. And again, we're going to do it over 50 milliseconds, so that is fine. li.selected remove class, that is fine. But this add class, we don't want to add it to nav1. We've gotten all the way to the beginning, which is nav1, and we want to move all the way to the end, which is nav7. And then lastly, the counter, because we moved all the way to the end, the counter changes to 7. So now let's save that, refresh, and what I'm going to do is go right until I get to the end. So we're on the last image here, and now I'm going to start using my left. Working fine. We're at the beginning. This is our boundary case to the end. Scroll through them again. Here's our boundary case to the end. So now one of the things that we need to address is we've got the pop-up working, but we need to move it over the one that we're hovering over. So let's go ahead and add that. And to kind of stay in line with the code that I've provided, I'm going to come above the right arrow click, and that's where I'm going to add this code. So this is going to be move the thumb image over the dot that is being hovered over. Now this is again, this is designed for exactly what we're making here. So if you add images, you're going to have to add more to this, and you'll have to figure out new numbers to use. So again, in designing this, it was a little trial and error in order to get that little triangle to go right over the dot and not be a little to the right or a little to the left. So that's part of what you'll have to deal with when you make your own. I'm going to do li pound nav1. So that's going to select that first li. I'm going to add a dot hover. This is where I want to create my function. Inside of this function, I want to select li.preview. And I want to change the CSS on it. So again, I'm going to do my CSS function, and then I'll put double quote, comma, double quote, and I have name equal value pairs, or in CSS, the name is a selector and then the value. So on the left is the name, and I'm going to change the left, and what I want to do is put a minus 34.5 px, and that's where it's going to place it on the screen. Now, these 3 lines we're going to copy and paste 6 more times because we have 7 images. So I'm going to copy this 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now as we move down here, we've got to change it from nav1 to nav2 and so on. So now we've got nav1 through nav6. The li.preview will stay the same, but what's going to change are these numbers. And again, this is getting that little box and the little triangle directly over the circle that's selected. So instead of minus 34.5, it's going to be minus 14 on the second one. On the third one, it's going to be 5 pixels. On the fourth one, it's going to be 24 pixels. On the fifth one, it's going to be 43 pixels. On the sixth one, it'll be 62 pixels. And on the seventh one, it will be 81 pixels. We'll save that. Come back, refresh this, and now we mouse over the first one, second one, third one, and you'll see that it's moving along, and uh-oh, I've got a problem there. So let's come back and look at that. Can you see where the problem is? I see it now. I didn't move my finger over to the 7 when I changed that. So that was a 6, I just changed it to a 7. Let's save that. Should be fine now. Refresh. There, we move back and forth. So now, if I were to get one of those numbers off, let's say this last one, I get one of those numbers off and I put a 91 instead of an 81. Come back, refresh. See, the little triangle's off. It's not where I want it to be. So that's what I'm saying by these numbers were trial and error. So that was an 81. So let's say that I had it at 83. It's going to be just a little bit off. It's not quite over the center. So I'll change that back to 81. So those numbers are trial and error. You continue to load it until you get it where you want it to be. We have one last part to add, and it's a little longer than the parts we've been dealing with. And again, to kind of line up with the code I've provided, we're going to put this last piece above what we just typed. And this is going to start with a few variables. So I'm going to create a variable called sign and set it equal to the empty string for now. I'm going to set another variable called image num with a capital N and set that equal to 0 to start. And I'm going to create another variable called move and set that equal to 0 to start. Now I want to select the anchor tags that have thumbnav as a class, and when those are clicked I want a function. And I'm going to put a comment at the end of this. So that we know that those closing brackets go with the selection of anchor.thumbnav. Now because it's an anchor tag, the first thing we want to put in here is prevent default. So we use event.preventDefault. And what that does is an anchor tag naturally follows an href, and we do not want that to happen. So if I'm not saving this, so I don't have that latest code in here. If I come here and I click this, it takes me directly to the image. Get that on screen. It takes me directly to the image here. So if I click back, you'll notice how I'm on index4.html is what I've called it. I'm going to go to number 7. It takes me directly to the image. So we don't want that. So event.preventDefault stops that from happening. Inside of here I'm going to create a variable called ref for reference. And I'm going to use this once again for whichever one I click. So which one did you click? I clicked this one. So this, and again we're going to use the attribute selector, and what we're going to choose is the href. And what that's going to do is give us the location of the image that was chosen. Now next, oops, sorry about that. Next, what we're going to do is look and see, because in this I named my images 1.jpg, 2.jpg, 3.jpg, and so on. So we're going to use a little string manipulation and grab the 1, 2, 3, or 4 up to 7. So we've got an if-else-if sequence. So I'm going to do an if here, and inside of the if we are going to use that variable ref, and the string manipulation that we're going to use is called index of. So you'll see that it pops up for us there. I'm going to separate this out a little bit so that the parentheses are maybe not as confusing. And we're looking for the index of 1. And we're saying if it's not equal to -1. Now -1 means it was not found. So if it's not equal to -1, that means it was found. And inside of there we're going to set the variable image num equal to 1. Now we just need to repeat this. Oops. I'm going to copy those 2 lines, and I'm going to paste it down 6 more times. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And again, instead of index of 1, we're looking for index of 2. Change it to 2. Index of 3, change it to 3. Index of 4, change it to 4. Index of 5, change it to 5. Index of 6, change it to 6. Index of 7, change it to 7. So now we're saying grab whichever one was clicked. Which one did we click? We clicked this one. So in that one that was clicked, does the image name have a 1 in it? If so, set this variable to 1. Does the image name have a 2 in it? If so, set the image num to 2. Does the image name have a 3 in it? If so, set image num to 3. Now the only thing with our copy and paste is that right now we have 7 different if statements, and what we want is an if-else sequence. So we need to put else space in front of all of these. And that will finish out that little if-else sequence there. Now we come down below there, and we need to determine how much to move the images based on which image was clicked. So what we've got here is another smaller if-else. We're going to create an if, and in that if we are going to look for, we're going to say counter minus the image number if it is less than 0. Now I want to make sure that this counter minus image number happens before the less than. So I'm going to group them together. So if the counter minus the image number is less than 0, let me scroll a little bit here, else, that will finish out our boundaries, our brackets for the if-else. Now inside of there we need to move it. So if it was less than 0, we're going to set move equal to, again I'm going to group the image number minus the counter, and we're going to take that number times 650. And we're going to set the sign equal to minus equals. Minus equals. So if the image number 7 is clicked, take 7 minus the counter times 650, which equals the amount to move the image. We come down in the else, we set move equal to, and again this time it's going to be counter minus image num. So see how we've switched those two there. It's still times 650. And then on this one we're going to set sign equal to plus equals. So if the image number 4 is clicked, take counter minus 4 times 650, which will equal the amount to move the image. Next, we move the image, which is quite short. So we select all of the images on the page, and we're going to animate them. Again, we're going to change the left, the CSS left of it, and what we do here is a little concatenation, but we're only using variables. So it's sign plus move. So that's actually text. The sign is in text because it's in double quotes, and move is actually a number, but because it's being concatenated with text, it will get converted to text. And then we do closing curly bracket, comma, 250 milliseconds, parentheses, semicolon, to move the image. I'll scroll down just a little bit, just about done with this. Next, as always, we need to set the counter. The counter, in this case, is going to be set equal to the image number that was clicked. So again, that's the off of the file name that we're using. So what you name the image is very important. It's got to be named 1.jpg, 2.jpg, and so on. And then we've got to move that selected class. So we're going to do li.selected and remove that class. Whoops. Selected from it. And then we are going to do something a little bit potentially tricky again. li pound nav. Now notice all of them are it's either pound nav 1, pound nav 2, pound nav 3, and so on. But in order to make this a little more dynamic, we need it to be pound nav concatenated with the image number that was chosen. So outside of those double quotes, a plus sign to concatenate, and concatenate the image number on there, and that will convert it to pound nav 2, for instance. Add class selected. And we are done. Let's test it. Come back here, refresh it. I want to go to the third one, fifth one, seventh one. Just bounce around. Make sure that the image and the thumbnail matches what you click. Also, go to one and then use these. And when you get to the end, test your boundary case. Go here, go back this way, test your boundary case, here, here, move back and forth, here, and so on. And that finishes out our jQuery for this assignment.